Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Hemali here, and thank you so much for joining me today. As you can tell, I still have my background up from my birthday video. I absolutely love it. It's super sparkly, so I think I'm gonna keep it up for a little while. So a little while back on my Instagram stories, I put up a question and answer box, and someone had asked me how I regulated my period naturally, and there was so many things that I had to do in order for that to happen. So I thought I would make an entire YouTube video on it in hopes of helping someone else that's going through a similar journey. Now, before I begin sharing my story, I just want to say this is something that personally worked for me and is based off of my experiences. I wouldn't say I'm a doctor, like a medical professional of any sort. I'm just kind of sharing my story in hopes that this will help guide you in your own journey and maybe help you look in places that you never really thought of looking before. So please make sure that you do your own research and seek the right help that you actually need, because what works for me may not always work for you, and I just want to make that very, very clear. I want to try to keep this video as short and sweet as possible, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. So first, let me just tell you what problems I was having with my period. I suffered from an irregular period for quite a long time. It was something that I suffered with when I was younger, and I went on birth control for a bit, and then it regulated, and then I was off of birth control for a really long time. But then when I hit about like 21, 22, it started becoming irregular again, and I wasn't really sure why. So I went back on birth control, but then about a year into me taking the birth control, I started bleeding again when I shouldn't have been. I wasn't like bleeding heavily, but I was still spotting, and it shouldn't have been happening. So I went back to my doctor, and my doctor prescribed me a higher dose of birth control, and shit just went real bad real fast after that. I was originally on a birth control called Lolo, and then I was prescribed a higher dosage of birth control called tricycline, and tricycline ended up giving me really bad mood swings. Like, they were so severe, and I would get angry in like the snap of a finger. It was absolutely awful, and getting those severe mood swings ended up leading me to become super anxious and depressed. And there was a point in time where I ended up becoming very I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but I had a lot of suicidal ideations, and it was just getting really bad. So I ended up switching back to my old birth control, but at that point the damage had already been done, and I was just getting mood swings from birth control at this point. There was really no going back. So after about 2 years of kind of going through that, I decided to get off birth control completely, and I was okay. My period was regular for about a month or two, and then after that it started coming consistently again. And then there was a point in time where I just like had my period for 4 months straight, and it was awful. So I was like, maybe I need to go back on birth control. But when I did, the mood swings started happening again, and I just like, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to figure out a new method to get my period regular, because birth control obviously wasn't working for me. To be honest, I really didn't want to be on pills for the rest of my life either. So I started to try to figure out natural ways of healing. And the reason I went a more natural route was because I had gone to so many different doctors, and no one could figure out why my period was so irregular and why I was bleeding so constantly. So I just felt like I had exhausted the method of going to doctors, and now I just was gonna try something else. So after being in and out of doctors for about 2.5 years, I went on a trip to Cuba with one of my really good friends, Kavita, who is very spiritual, and I opened up to her about all my problems, and she was saying, you know, maybe you're just surrounded by really bad energy and you need to heal that energy. She recommended that I go to something called Reiki, and Reiki is like energy healing. It's supposed to heal your energy and help you heal emotionally and physically. It sounded kind of wild, but at that point I was willing to try anything, because my two options were either I get off birth control and I constantly bleed, or I stay on birth control and I was just crazy and having insane mood swings. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try Reiki, see where this goes. Energy is something that I do believe in, and spirituality was something that I always kind of believed in. I was never able to put it into words. And then when Kavita kind of explained it to me, it all made sense. We're all made of energy. We're all made from the same energy. And so it has to be connected. So if there's bad energy in the world, like that can be connected to you, just as if there is good energy in the world, that can also be connected to you. And it is your job to, like, you know, make sure that you keep your energy clean and good. And I just felt like maybe I was just in a position in my life where I was just continuously surrounded by negative energy, and I needed to cleanse myself of that. And I mean, it made sense to me at the time, and I think I was just really desperate for an answer, so I gave it a try, and I'm so happy I did, because Reiki was really the beginning of my healing journey. It really changed the course of my life and got me to where I am today, and I think was the start of what really regulated my period. So when I started my Reiki journey, I don't know if it was like my own belief in it and my desperation to heal, or if it was actually the Reiki, or maybe it was a combination of both, but it really did start to change my life around in the first year to year and a half of when I started Reiki. Like, just so many things happened. There was so much change, a lot of purging that also happened in my life, that just completely changed the way I looked at life in general too. I felt like a lot of things had started coming to light, and I started realizing a lot of the issues that I personally had and the issues that were surrounding me. So after a couple of months of starting Reiki, I decided to get off birth control again, and my period was somewhat regular, but then I was still having really bad mood swings even though I was off the birth control, and I just didn't understand what was happening. And then when I tracked my period, I realized that I was only having these mood swings, these like really intense bad mood swings in and around my period. And a little while after that, I ended up getting diagnosed with PMDD, and I realized that my period was like just a really big problem in my life. Now that I wasn't constantly bleeding, my problems were kind of manifesting into mood swings when I was having my period, and all my problems were really manifesting through my period. And I realized that I just need a complete lifestyle change. It was clear that through Reiki, there was a lot of things that were happening in my life that I just wasn't addressing, and so I needed to start addressing them and changing the way I lived my life in order to become healthier. And so that led me to an entire lifestyle change, really. So one major thing that I learned in that year and a half where I had started Reiki was that a lot of my period problems were actually coming from internalized stress and anxiety and depression, and just me being in and around toxic environments and people. And as all these things started coming to light, my life started changing a lot. I had dropped my friends that were friends of mine for 10 years. I felt like were very toxic to me. I moved out of my house because I felt like my home was also a very toxic environment. I wasn't getting along with my parents, and I needed to distance myself from them. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my parents. It was just that at the time we weren't getting along properly. We had our differences, and so I needed to get out of that environment because it just wasn't healthy for me, and it also wasn't healthy for them too, because I was obviously coming off to my parents with a lot of resentment, which I shouldn't have, and I think they were just kind of reciprocating that same type of energy back. And so needing that distance from them really helped me heal and understand their perspective and grow from the situation too, and it actually kind of helped also heal our relationship. I also started realizing that I had really unhealthy coping mechanisms when it came to my stress and anxiety and my childhood trauma that I just like never healed from. And one thing that I did quite often was I overworked. I would just like dive into work and lose myself in it, and so I would overwork all the time, which would end up causing my body even more stress instead of just like identifying and solving the root cause of my problem, which was, you know, childhood trauma and stress and toxic environment. And then I realized I really needed to change my entire lifestyle in order to fix my problems and regulate my period. So the first thing that I did was start to learn how to manage my stress and create a good work-life balance. Prior to me doing this, I was working crazy hours. I worked two full-time jobs. actually almost 3. I had a full-time 9 to 5. I was also working as a makeup artist and as an influencer. And so I was just constantly working. I never slept properly. I always put my work ahead of my health. And I just realized by doing that, I was just causing myself more problems. So I started to cut back on working a lot and then addressing and focusing on fixing my mental health instead. One thing that I did was started implementing rest days into my work routine just to make sure that I was getting the rest and relaxation I needed and I wasn't like constantly overworking my body. Another thing that I did was create a morning routine. This was super helpful for me because it just really set my intentions for the day and helped me get through my work day and week without having an overload of stress and anxiety about everything. I think growing up in an Indian household, you're constantly feel pressure to do well and succeed, and I put that pressure on myself heavily, and that led to me lacking a lot of self-confidence in myself. And so in my morning routine, I would journal about my feelings and start saying positive affirmations to myself so that I could focus on gaining my self-confidence back and feeling like myself again. And then again, like I said, I journaled my feelings and journaled how I wanted my day to go and, you know, what happened the day before and how I could improve and etc, etc. So it really helped me like organize my thoughts and walk through my feelings because I'm also a huge overthinker. And another thing that I did during my morning routine was meditate. Again, it just really helped me set my intentions for the day and calm my body down. Another thing that I incorporated into my life was exercise. I was never exercising before and I had a really shit diet, which I will get to in a minute, but I started exercising and that also helped me relieve a lot of stress that was happening in my life, and it helped me get the physical activity that my body needed. I was probably one of like the laziest people ever. So I hired a personal trainer to actually like make sure that I ended up going to the gym because I was paying for it and there was like someone else kind of depending on me to be there. So it forced me to kind of go because I know if there wasn't, like I probably wouldn't have gone. So I put myself in a position where I knew I had to go. And then from there, once I actually got into the routine of going to exercise regularly, I really enjoyed it. And I noticed it just helped my health so much, and again, helped contribute to regulating my period, and also helped contribute to making my period pains a lot less, and also helped regulate my mood swings that I was having from my PMDD. The next thing I did was I took a look at my diet and I had to fix up some things in my diet. Like I mentioned before, I was eating like shit. I wouldn't say I changed my diet a whole lot, but I definitely introduced a lot more greens into my meals, which I don't think I was doing a lot of before. Like I wasn't eating a lot of salads and veggies and fruits and things like that before. So I started introducing that more into my diet. I have a really bad sugar addiction. I'm gonna call it an addiction because that shit is so addicting. I had to start slowly like weaning myself off of sugar, refined sugar specifically, because I was eating a lot of sugary snacks like iced cappuccinos, things like that, like things that just had a lot of sugar in them. And that was really, really bad for my period and also really helped irregulate it. Once I started slowly cutting that out, again, my period started becoming a lot more regular. And I also found that sugar really messed up my mood as well. It caused my mood swings to be a lot worse. So once I started kind of weaning off of sugar as well, my mood swings became a lot more stabilized. I also went to a naturopath. She offered me some supplements that I should take. So one thing she prescribed me was serotonin. I take 2 capsules of these a day. Another thing she prescribed me was this like Chinese like herbal medicine. Both of these things were to really help with my period and help stabilize my mood. And then there was other supplements that I was taking on a regular basis anyways prior to me even going to the naturopath, again, to really just help nourish my body and give it the nutrients that it needed. So I was taking vitamin C, omega-3, primrose oil, and vitamin D. And then the final thing I would say that really helped me regulate my period was going to therapy. Therapy really helped me understand how to cope with my stress and anxiety and depression, and how to cope with the mood swings that I was getting around my period because of my PMDD. Therapy really helped me work through my past trauma and understand understand my triggers so that I can kind of calm myself down before I even kind of go through a spiral, go through a mood swing, and really get triggered. I would highly, highly recommend therapy, even if you're not going through period problems, or you know, you're not having the same type of period problems as me, just because I feel like it just helps you walk through your emotions a lot better and give you an understanding of how to cope with your problems in life. So that's just like a side promo for therapy, just because I really believe in it and I feel like it is super helpful. But yeah, I think going through therapy just again helped me regulate my period, because it helped me cope with that stress and anxiety that I was feeling, and really helped me cope with my emotions so that I wasn't kind of overworking myself and overworking my body. And I actually found healthy coping mechanisms to deal with when I felt down and out, or when I felt like things were kind of going wrong. I didn't revert back to binge eating sugar or losing myself in my work and overworking myself and any of those kind of unhealthy coping mechanisms that I had been doing for so long. Those are the things that I did to regulate my period. I know it's not the traditional way of just like going to the doctors and figuring out what was going on. It was a lot of trial and error on my part. It was a very, very long process. It took me about, I would say, 4 to 5 years to fully understand what was going on and get to a point where I felt okay in my body again. I just want to say, if you're going through a similar process, that it is going to take time for you to figure out what works with you and really heal yourself. Especially if you're going the natural way. The natural way just takes a lot more time and a lot more energy, but it is possible. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're not seeing results right away. Again, it took me years to get to this point. So I just want to kind of give you hope in that sense that it will happen. It just kind of takes time. Anyways, if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions, because I know my journey isn't the normal one. And I also just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to learn from me and watch my videos. I really, really appreciate it. If you did like this video and you found it helpful, please do not forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. And as always, thank you so much for all the love and support you constantly show me, and I'll see you next time. Bye!